The massive crystal dome of the Intergalactic Council headquarters sparkled under the light of three suns. Inside, Ambassador James adjusted his plain black tie for the 10th time, standing out among the colorful robes and shimmering scales of the alien representatives. This was humanity's first official meeting with the Council, and he intended to make a good impression. "The human delegation may now address the Council," announced the chief speaker, their voice echoing through the chamber. The alien's four eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of formal recognition. James stepped forward, his footsteps echoing on the marble-like floor. "Honorable Council members, Earth and its colonies thank you for this historic opportunity. We look forward to joining the galactic community and sharing in peaceful trade and cultural exchange." A murmur of approval rippled through the chamber. Several council members nodded their various appendages in agreement. This was going better than expected. Then the alarms began. Red lights pulsed through the crystal dome, casting crimson shadows across the assembled delegates. The chief speaker's assistant rushed in, their tentacles wrapped around a data tablet. "Emergency. The Dominion fleet has broken through the neutral zone. They're attacking human colonies in the Orient sector." The chamber erupted in chaos. Council members rose from their seats, some extending defensive membranes, others changing colors in distress. But James noticed something odd. None of them seemed surprised. Instead, they looked at him with what he recognized as pity. The chief speaker raised all four arms for silence. "Ambassador James, we regret this unfortunate timing. However, please be assured that this is a standard procedure. The Dominion often tests new member species. Once you submit to the standard surrender protocols, they will establish favorable terms." James blinked. Surrender protocols. A holographic display activated in the center of the chamber, showing the Dominion fleet. Massive ships shaped like crystalline arrowheads, hundreds of them, moving with precise military formation toward the human colonies. "Yes," the chief speaker continued, their tone gentle, as if explaining to a child. "All civilized species have surrender protocols. When faced with overwhelming force, it prevents unnecessary loss of life. The Dominion's terms are usually quite reasonable. They typically only demand control of 30% of a species' territory." James watched the display as the first shots were fired. The human colonial defense ships, massively outgunned, scattered in what looked like chaos to the council members. But James recognized the pattern. The ships were moving into guerrilla warfare positions they had drilled countless times. "I don't understand," said a delegate with luminous fur. "Why haven't they activated their surrender beacon yet?" The chief speaker turned all four eyes to James. "Ambassador, please transmit your surrender protocols. The longer you delay, the less favorable the terms will be." James stood straight, his face showing no emotion as he watched the battle unfold. "There seems to be a misunderstanding. We don't have surrender protocols." The chamber went silent. Even the alarms seemed to dim. "That's impossible," whispered the fur-covered delegate. "All species have surrender protocols. It's a fundamental part of civilization." "Perhaps," the chief speaker suggested, "the humans use a different term." "Ambassador, how does your species formally submit to a superior force?" James turned to face the council, his expression deadly serious. "We don't. Humanity has many protocols. First aid protocols, diplomatic protocols, emergency evacuation protocols. But surrender, that's not in our database." On the holographic display, the human ships began their first counterattack. A small corvette, barely a tenth the size of a Dominion vessel, slipped through their formation and landed a critical hit on their flagship's engine array. The council members watched in horror as the human ships, instead of retreating, pressed their attack. But they outnumber you 12 to 1, sputtered a crystalline being. "Their technology is centuries ahead of yours." James smiled slightly, though his eyes remained hard. Then this should be interesting. 3 days had passed since the initial Dominion attack, and the Intergalactic Council chamber remained in constant session. The holographic display showed hundreds of battles across human space, each one defying galactic military logic. Admiral Kate stood on the bridge of the Earth ship Thunder, watching her tactical display. The Dominion's massive warships filled the screen, their crystal-like hulls glowing with energy weapons. Her own fleet was badly outnumbered, but her face showed no fear. "Ma'am," her communications officer called out, "the Dominion commander is broadcasting again. It's their 7th surrender demand." Kate didn't turn around. "Put them on screen." The alien commander appeared, his crystalline features arranged in what passed for confusion. "Human Admiral, you have fought well, but this continued resistance is pointless. We offer standard surrender terms, only 25% of your territory required, given your impressive display of valor." In the council chamber, the assembled delegates leaned forward. Surely now, after 3 days of constant losses, the humans would activate their surrender protocols. Kate's response shocked them all. "Sorry about the delay in responding. We've had our tech team searching all our databases. Still no surrender protocols found. However, we did find some interesting combat maneuvers I'd like to show you." The Dominion commander's crystal features cracked slightly in frustration. "This is madness. You've lost 43 ships, and you've lost 38. Kate replied with a small smile. "Not bad odds, considering your technological advantage." The council members quickly did the math. The humans were badly outgunned, yet they'd managed to destroy nearly 1 Dominion ship for each ship they'd lost. It was unprecedented. Back on the Thunder, Kate turned to her tactical officer. "Launch Operation Hornet's Nest." Across human space, seemingly defeated human fleets suddenly sprang into action. Small, fast ships that had been playing dead reactivated, swarming the larger Dominion vessels like angry insects. They didn't try to destroy the massive ships. They just darted in, caused damage, and retreated. "What is this chaos?" the Dominion commander demanded. "This isn't proper warfare. There's no formation, no battle line." In the council chamber, Ambassador James watched the displays with pride. A furry delegate turned all 3 eye stalks toward him. "Your ships, they're fighting like animals, like insects. There's no order." "On the contrary," James replied calmly, "there's perfect order. We call it controlled chaos. Your civilizations have fought wars the same way for so long, you've forgotten that there are other ways to fight." The holographic displays showed more Dominion ships falling into disarray. Their perfect formations, maintained for 10,000 years of warfare, broke apart as they tried to chase the nimble human vessels. "Admiral," the Dominion commander tried one last time, "your species must have some way to admit defeat, some way to end battles when victory is impossible." Kate's face hardened. Victory is never impossible. Humanity has faced impossible odds our entire history. When the odds are against us, we don't surrender, we get creative. As if to prove her point, a group of human mining ships suddenly dropped out of faster-than-light travel behind the Dominion fleet. Before anyone could react, they sprayed their industrial cutting beams across the enemy ship's engines. The council chamber erupted in shocked whispers. "They turned mining ships into weapons," gasped the chief speaker. That's not proper military protocol." James shrugged. "We have a saying on Earth, necessity is the mother of invention. When we don't have the right tools, we make them." The displays showed more human ships arriving. Cargo vessels refitted with armor, science ships broadcasting disrupting frequencies, even space station maintenance tugs equipped with makeshift weapons. The Dominion commander's face showed an emotion no one had seen before in their species: fear. "We don't need surrender protocols," Kate announced to both the enemy fleet and the watching council. "We need coffee, determination, and a problem to solve. And you've given us all 3. The emergency council session entered its 2nd week. On the main display, human forces continued their strange, chaotic resistance against the Dominion. But now, in the center of the chamber stood Dr. Mark, an alien scientist who had secretly studied humans for years. Distinguished council members, Dr. Mark began, his gray skin shifting colors with excitement. To understand why humans don't surrender, you must first understand their history. He waved his hand, and the holographic display changed to show ancient Earth battles. Take this example, a battle called Thermopylae. 300 soldiers stood against an army of thousands. They knew they would die, yet they fought anyway. The chief speaker's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. This was a malfunction in their logic systems. No, Dr. Mark said, changing the display to show more battles throughout human history. This was, and is their normal behavior. Humans don't calculate battles purely by numbers. They have something else, something I've never seen in any other species. In the corner, Ambassador James watched with interest as Dr. Mark tried to explain humanity to the council. The alien scientist was doing better than most at understanding human nature. Look at this, Dr. Mark continued, showing images of human achievements. When humans want to fly, they build planes. When they want to explore the ocean depths, they build submarines. When something seems impossible, they don't give up. They find a way. But that defies basic survival logic. A crystalline delegate protested. When faced with superior force, survival requires submission. Dr. Mark shook his head. Humans have a different kind of survival logic. They believe that giving up is a form of death itself. Their history books are filled with stories of the impossible becoming possible. The display changed to show current battle footage. A small human ship was flying directly into a Dominion energy beam to land a critical hit. See this behavior? Dr. Mark pointed. Any other species would calculate the survival odds and retreat. Humans calculate the same odds, and then ignore them completely if they believe their goal is worth the risk. Are they simply not intelligent enough to understand when they are beaten? Asked a furry delegate. Ambassador James couldn't help but laugh. The council members turned to him in surprise. We understand perfectly well, James explained. We just don't care. Humans have a long history of being beaten and then winning anyway. It's become part of who we are. Dr. Mark nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. In my research, I found countless examples. Humans were beaten when they tried to fly, when they tried to split the atom, when they tried to reach their moon. But they kept trying until they succeeded. The display shifted again, showing human medical facilities. They even fight death itself. Dr. Mark continued. When a disease is incurable, humans don't accept that. They keep fighting until they find a cure. The chief speaker raised all 4 hands in confusion. But how can an entire species ignore basic probability? They don't ignore it, Dr. Mark explained. They simply believe they can change it. And the strangest thing is, they often do. Their determination actually alters the odds. As if to prove his point, the battle displays showed another human victory. A Dominion ship 4 times the size of its human opponent had just been disabled by an improvised weapon made from mining equipment. In conclusion, Dr. Mark said, his skin now bright with academic excitement, humans are the only known species who become more determined when faced with impossible odds. They don't have surrender protocols because surrender simply isn't part of their psychological makeup. The council chamber fell silent as they watched more battle footage. The humans were still badly outnumbered, still fighting with inferior technology. But now, for the first time, the council members began to wonder if the mighty Dominion had made a terrible mistake in choosing humanity as their target. In the corner, Ambassador James smiled. The galaxy was finally beginning to understand. Commander Tom stood on the bridge of the scout ship Swift, staring at the massive Dominion warship through the view screen. His small ship was barely the size of the enemy's weapon array, but a smile played across his face. "Sir," his second-in-command said quietly, "are you sure about this plan? The math says it's impossible." "The math doesn't know humans very well," Tom replied. He opened a channel to the rest of his small fleet. Just 5 ships, each no bigger than a normal cargo vessel. "All ships, remember the plan. We hit them where they think they're strongest." In the council chamber, the aliens watched the small human fleet with confusion. The chief speaker turned to Ambassador James. "What are they doing? Those ships are far too small to attack a Dominion warship." James just watched quietly, recognizing the glint in Commander Tom's eye from countless human battles before. Back on the Swift, Tom gave the order. "All ships, full power to engines. Execute Operation Crazy Ivan." The 5 human ships suddenly accelerated straight toward the Dominion warship. The massive alien vessel powered up its shields, expecting a suicidal attack run. But the human ships didn't fire. Instead, they aimed directly for the brightest parts of the enemy's shield, where the energy was strongest. "They've lost their minds." A crystal delegate gasped. "They're flying straight into the enemy's strongest defenses." The Dominion ship's shields blazed like a small sun, ready to vaporize anything that touched them. The human ships should have turned to ash the moment they made contact. Instead, they passed straight through. Tom's voice crackled over the comm system, explaining to both his crew and the watching council. Dominion shields are designed to block attacks. The stronger the attack, the stronger the shield. But what happens when you don't attack at all? The small human fleet was now inside the Dominion ship's shield bubble, too close for the massive energy weapons to target. The giant ship's defenses have been built to stop attacks, not to stop ships that simply wanted to fly through them. "Fire the mining lasers," Tom ordered. Each human ship activated their modified mining equipment, tools designed to cut through asteroids, now turned into precise weapons. The Dominion's hull, never designed to face attacks from inside its own shields, began to crack. In the council chamber, Dr. Mark was practically jumping with excitement. Brilliant. They turned the enemy's strength into a weakness. No other species would even think to try this, flying straight into the strongest part of an enemy shield. The Dominion ship began to break apart, its mighty weapons useless against enemies too close to target. As his fleet moved to disable the enemy vessel's engines, Tom opened a channel to the Dominion commander. "Your shields are amazing," he said casually. "They're perfect for stopping attacks. But humans, sometimes we don't attack. Sometimes we just want to get close and give you a hug." The council chamber erupted in chaos as they watched the mighty Dominion warship fall to 5 tiny human vessels. The chief speaker's 4 eyes were wide with disbelief. "This changes everything," they whispered. "Every combat doctrine, every defense system. They're all built on the assumption that enemies will attack in logical ways." Ambassador James nodded. "There's an old human saying, think outside the box. When we fight, we don't just think outside the box. We forget the box exists." As they watched, more human fleets began copying Tom's tactic across the battle zone. Dominion ships everywhere found their mighty shields useless against enemies who simply didn't fight the way they were supposed to. The furry delegate turned to James. "Your commander, Tom. He must be one of your greatest military minds to think of this strategy." James laughed. "Actually, he used to be a cargo pilot. He just happened to remember how cargo ships sometimes draft behind each other to save fuel, and thought, why not try it with a shield?" The council fell silent again, finally beginning to understand just how dangerous humans could be. They didn't just fight differently. They turned everyday knowledge into weapons, and impossibilities into opportunities. The Intergalactic Council called an emergency meeting to understand the human mind. The chamber was packed with scientists, military experts, and diplomats from 100 worlds. Dr. Mark stood at the center again, but this time he had help, recordings from captured human soldiers. "Watch this," Dr. Mark said, playing a video of a human prisoner being questioned by Dominion forces. The recording showed a young human soldier, captured after her ship was destroyed. The Dominion interrogator loomed over her, voice booming. "Your ship is gone. Your crew is scattered. Tell us why you continue to resist." The soldier looked up, one eye swollen shut, and smiled. "Because you haven't won yet." Dr. Mark paused the recording. Noticed the smile. When most species are defeated, their morale drops. Humans? Their determination actually increases under pressure. The chief speaker rubbed their four temples in confusion. But that defies basic psychological principles. Fear and hopelessness should increase the surrender response. Ambassador James stepped forward. "May I?" he asked Dr. Mark, who nodded enthusiastically. "Let me tell you about something we call the backup plan," James said. "Humans always have a plan. When that fails, we have a backup plan. When that fails, we make another plan on the spot. We keep making plans until something works." The holographic display showed human battles from the current war. Small groups of fighters taking on massive Dominion forces, retreating, regrouping, trying new tactics. "Look here," Dr. Mark pointed. "This human squad was cut off from support. Traditional military doctrine says they should surrender. Instead, they turned their broken ship's engine into a bomb, used it as a distraction, and escaped in captured enemy vessels." A crystalline delegate sparkled in agitation. "But how do they maintain morale?" "Our studies show that continued resistance against superior forces causes psychological damage." James laughed. "We have a saying, where there's a will, there's a way. As long as we believe there's even a tiny chance of victory, we'll keep fighting. And we always believe there's a chance." The display changed to show human entertainment, movies and books about past battles and victories against impossible odds. "This is fascinating," Dr. Mark explained. "Humans actually train themselves from childhood to never give up. They tell stories about victories that seemed impossible. They celebrate historical defeats that later led to victories. They've turned persistence into an art form." The furry delegate raised all three eye stalks. "Is this why they keep making jokes in battle? We thought their communication systems were malfunctioning." "Ah, humor." Dr. Mark's skin rippled with academic excitement. "Humans use jokes to maintain morale. The worse the situation, the more they joke. It's a psychological defense mechanism that actually increases their combat effectiveness." The display showed more battle footage. A human ship, badly damaged, was broadcasting. "Hey Dominion, your mama's so fat. Her shield generator has its own shield generator." They were making jokes while their ship was on fire, a delegate observed in disbelief. James nodded. "Humor helps us think. When we laugh at a problem, we're not afraid of it anymore. When we're not afraid, we think more clearly. When we think more clearly, you find new ways to fight." The chief speaker finished, finally beginning to understand. "Exactly," Dr. Mark confirmed. "And here's the most important part. Humans don't just refuse to surrender. They actively get excited by the challenge of facing impossible odds." The chamber watched as more battle recordings played. Each showed humans facing overwhelming forces with not just determination, but actual enthusiasm. In conclusion, Dr. Mark said, "Trying to make humans surrender through force is like trying to put out a fire by giving it more wood. Every defeat just makes them more determined. Every setback just makes them more creative." The council chamber was silent as this truth sank in. They had finally begun to understand why the mighty Dominion was failing. They weren't just fighting human weapons or tactics. They were fighting against the very core of human nature itself. Lieutenant Anna stood in front of her fleet of converted mining ships, a determined smile on her face. Behind her, the massive screens showed the approaching Dominion Armada, 50 warships against her 20 mining vessels. "Remember," she broadcast to her crew, "they're expecting warriors. Let's show them what miners can do." In the council chamber, the alien delegates watched with a mixture of horror and fascination. Over the past month, they had learned to expect the unexpected from humans, but this seemed like pure madness. "Those are mining ships," the crystal delegate protested. "Their armor wouldn't stop a meteor, let alone military weapons." Ambassador James simply smiled. He had seen the glint in Lieutenant Anna's eye during the planning session. It was the same look humans got just before they did something that would rewrite the rules of warfare. Back in space, Anna's fleet moved into position. The Dominion ships formed their standard attack pattern, weapons charged and ready. Their commander's voice boomed across all channels. "Foolish humans, you face the elite guard of the Dominion with mining equipment. Surrender now, and we will be merciful." Anna's response was simple. "Hey boys, ready to do some drilling?" Her ship suddenly released clouds of mining dust, tiny particles normally used to track mineral veins and asteroids. The Dominion ships fired their energy weapons, but the beams scattered in the dust cloud, creating a dazzling light show. "Now," Anna ordered, "start the music." Human rock music blasted across all frequencies, jamming Dominion communications. Her mining ships activated their industrial cutting beams, modified to work in sync with the pulsing beat of the music. What are they doing?" the furry delegate asked, all three eye stalks twitching in confusion. Dr. Mark, who hadn't left the council chamber in days, laughed in delight. "They're using mining dust to scatter energy weapons, cutting beams synchronized to music to bypass shield frequencies. And are they actually mining the Dominion ships?" They were. Anna's fleet had split into teams, systematically cutting away at the massive warships like they were just particularly stubborn asteroids. The Dominion crews, trained for traditional space combat, had no defense against opponents who treated their mighty warships like rocks to be carved up. "Lieutenant," one of her crew called out, "they're trying to adjust their shields." "Then it's time for Phase 2, Anna replied. "Release the boomboxes." Small devices, originally used to send sonic pulses through asteroids for mineral scanning, attached themselves to the Dominion ships' hulls. When activated, they sent vibrations through the crystal-like material of the alien vessels at their natural resonance frequency. The mighty warships began to shake themselves apart. In the council chamber, the chief speaker's 4 eyes were wide with disbelief. They turned mining survey equipment into weapons that exploit the crystalline structure of Dominion ships. How could they even think of this? James shrugged. Lieutenant Anna spent 15 years as a deep space miner before joining the military. She knows more about breaking rocks than any military commander. And from a miner's perspective, those Dominion ships are just fancy crystals. The display showed more Dominion ships falling into chaos. Their crews, faced with an enemy that ignored every rule of combat they knew, began to show signs of panic. Some ships fired wildly into the dust clouds. Others tried to retreat, only to find their engines had been precisely cut away. "This is the true horror of fighting humans," Dr. Mark observed. "They don't think like soldiers. They think like humans. Every civilian skill, every piece of non-military knowledge, becomes a potential weapon." The council watched as the mighty Dominion elite guard was systematically taken apart by mining ships playing rock music. Their perfect military doctrine, refined over thousands of years, meant nothing against opponents who simply refused to fight the way they were supposed to. In the corner, Ambassador James hummed along to the music. Sometimes, he thought, the best way to win a war was to refuse to fight it the way your enemy expected. The Intergalactic Council chamber was silent as the Dominion's Supreme Commander stood at the podium. His crystalline form showed signs of stress fractures, a physical representation of how thoroughly humanity had shaken his empire. "In the 10,000 years of Dominion history," he began, his voice wavering, "we have never done what I am about to do." He paused, his crystal structure dimming. "I hereby announce the Dominion's complete and unconditional surrender to humanity." The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. The mighty Dominion, surrendering. It was unprecedented. The chief speaker had to wave all 4 arms for silence. Admiral Kate and Commander Tom stood beside Ambassador James, their faces serious but not triumphant. Lieutenant Anna sat nearby, still wearing her mining engineer's jacket over her military uniform. "Before we accept this surrender," James said calmly, "I want to make something clear. Humanity doesn't want your territory. We don't want to rule your worlds. We just want you to understand one simple thing. Never assume that superior technology means automatic victory." Dr. Mark stepped forward, his gray skin rippling with excitement. "If I may, I believe this moment represents more than just the end of a war. It represents a fundamental shift in how the galaxy must think about conflict and species development." The council members leaned forward as Dr. Mark activated the central display, showing scenes from the war. Mining ships defeating warships, cargo vessels becoming stealth weapons, civilian tools turned into military assets. The Dominion didn't just lose to human military forces, Dr. Mark explained. They lost to human miners, engineers, cargo pilots, and mechanics. They lost to human creativity, adaptability, and the absolute refusal to accept defeat. The Supreme Commander's crystal form flickered in agreement. "We thought we were fighting an inferior military force. Instead, we were fighting an entire species that turns everything, into a potential weapon. Even their entertainment became a weapon when they used music to disrupt our shield frequencies." James stepped forward again. "Which brings me to humanity's proposal for the Council. We need to rewrite the rules of galactic civilization. No more assumptions about proper warfare. No more expectations of surrender protocols." The chief speaker blinked all four eyes. "What are you suggesting?" "A new principle," James said. "Never assume any species will react the way you expect. Never assume superior force guarantees victory. And most importantly, never start a war unless you're ready to face opponents who might think completely differently than you do." Admiral Kate added, "We humans have a saying. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. The galaxy needs to understand this." The council chamber was quiet as the implications sank in. The furry delegate was first to speak. "This changes everything. Our entire understanding of species classification, combat doctrine, diplomatic protocols." "Exactly," James nodded. "And that's good. Change means growth. Growth means survival. And survival," he smiled, "well, that's something humans know a lot about." The chief speaker stood, all four arms raised in a formal gesture. "The Council recognizes the wisdom in these words. Let it be recorded that from this day forward, our protocols will include what shall be known as the human factor, the understanding that determination, creativity, and refusal to surrender can overcome any technological advantage." As the council members voted unanimously to accept this new principle, James looked at his fellow humans. They had come to the stars expecting to be a minor player in a vast galactic civilization. Instead, they had taught the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. The Supreme Commander walked over to them, his crystal form still showing signs of battle damage. "There's one thing I still don't understand," he said quietly. "How do humans do it? How do you keep fighting when all logic says you should give up?" James smiled. "That's simple. We look at the impossible and say 3 words. Hold my beer." The council chamber filled with laughter, at least from those species who had already learned about human beverages. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was probably a good thing.